Hello underwater friends. In this video I'm gonna tell you why the GoPro 11 Black is a good camera for underwater, or at least can be, and then I will give you the settings that you should use when you go underwater, or at least a few options that you can try. Oh, and by the way, all of the videos you can see today have been shot in Bali. If you're interested, don't hesitate to come see us in Plouf Diving. We organize safaris. We organize everything for you, from hotel to transfer and of course diving. I do also photo and video course, 1 day or more. Actually for video, 3 days much better, or at least 3 days. And I also help the photographer that don't need training to have their private spotter and enjoy all of the macro critters we have around Bali. Okay, let's talk about the GoPro 11 Black for a little bit. Okay, so the GoPro 11 Black is a great tool for underwater video and also video at the surface. It can be very useful. You can use presets and it works pretty good. And you can also use personal settings, and we'll see that at the end of the video. One of the great things about the GoPro 11 is the Hypersmooth 5.0. It's great. Even if your buoyancy is not perfect, you're gonna make nice shots and quite steady. Of course, it's always better to have a good buoyancy. So either you go at the bottom if it's sand and you cannot break anything and you shoot. In general, you never want to move too much when you do your shots. But even if you have to swim while filming, normally the Hypersmooth should be enough to help you and make great shots. It's waterproof by itself to 10 meters. So for snorkeling or basic diving, it's okay. But if you want to bring it deeper, you have brand housing that are quite cheap and go to around 40 meters. And then you can even have more expensive housings that can go to 40 or even down to 60 meters. The great thing about having a housing is that you can put a tray on top of it, and the tray is super nice. First, to make stable shots, you're gonna be much more steady if you hold two sides of the tray than if you just hold the camera. Personally, if I have my introductions and basic divers, I can always just take my GoPro in one hand. I've been doing it so many times that it's okay. But in general, you're gonna be much more stable if you hold the tray with two hands and actually even put your elbows on your chest, and like this you're gonna be super stable. The great thing about having a tray as well is that you can put lights on top and underwater, because we lose lots of color. It's very nice to be able to bring light with you. For photo, you can shoot 27 megapixel, but I don't recommend GoPro too much for photo. On land it's okay, but underwater, because you cannot trigger a flash, it's most of the time not the greatest. Of course, if you have powerful light, it can be okay, but in most cases, it's not really nice. So stick to video. For video, you can shoot 5.3K, 60 frames per second. You can do 4K 120 and even 2.7K, 240 frames per second. So you can do a great slow motion and still crop if you want to have a result in full HD. And if you want to use 4K or more, you can still have enough frames per second to be able to slow it down a little. The camera is about 150 grams and it has two screens. One in the back when you shoot normally, and even one in the front that you can even use to do selfies. The battery will last between 50 minutes and 110 minutes, depending on what settings you're gonna use. Of course, the highest resolution you're gonna do, and the most frame per second, the more the battery is gonna be limited. But in general, it's gonna be good enough. You have two ports, one micro HDMI and one USB-C. So quite good connection. You can use micro SD, XC, SD cards, so it's quite fast, and actually you need it fast because you have many frames per second and the resolution is quite big. It's a very good tool for wide angle, so for general dive, big fish, friends, wrecks, etc. But for macro, even if you put a diopter in the front, it's not really good. The presets are quite okay, so you can do many things, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it's much better if you can do your own presets. You want to put the quick capture on, meaning that even if your camera is off, by just pressing the shutter, you're gonna start your recording. It's very important because the battery is not the best, so you want to turn it off between shots, and actually being able to just press one button and start the recording a few seconds later is quite a good thing. You have quite a few presets that can be super nice for you. If you don't want to go too much into settings and everything, you can just use it. Standard is 4K 30 frames per second and wide. Activity will take 4K 60 frames per second wide. So if you want to shoot fast action or stuff like this, it's going to be very good. Then you have cinematic, that is 5.3K, 30 frames per second and linear. So you want to get the closest as possible to filming with a regular camera. That's what you need. Super slow-mo is 2.7K with 240 frames per second. So it's great if you want to slow down your action. And this one is wide, so you can slow down the action and even bring it to full HD or 2K and still crop a little bit. And the final one is the basic one, full HD, 60 frames per second. And this one is wide as well. So if you don't want to overheat, if you don't want to use too much battery, if you just have a basic computer and you don't want to worry about, that's probably the best option. But the best way to use your camera with its full potential is to do your setting yourself. So you go on one of the settings and then you hit the pencil and then you can change all of the settings. Resolution, it will depend on what you want to do. You can go from 5.3K to full HD. It will depend if you want to crop at the end or also what kind of format you want to export. Most people will use the highest possible, but depending on what you want to do with your clip, it's not very useful. So it will really depend if you want to crop in post or not. 4K, you can use 120 frames per second, so you can already slow it down a lot. So normally, if your computer is fast and you have no problem and 2 batteries and you can change it between dives, probably that's the best option, 4K 120. That's not the only one. You can also do 5.3K up to 60 frames per second. It's if you really want to be able to crop a lot and if slow motion is not mandatory for you. For the lens, you can choose between wide or linear. This will also depend the kind of animals you want to shoot. If you're hunting for whales and big sharks and shipwrecks and stuff like this, probably wide is the best. But if you want your shot to look more realistic and not have the fisheye look, then probably linear is the best for you. Hyper smooth, on, all the time. Even for me, I have quite a good buoyancy, but I always keep it on. It can really help in case, if you're shaking a little bit or if you're swimming a little bit. Normally, what I say is that you should stand in one place and wait for the action to pass in front of you. But sometimes you have to swim as well. And if you do, hyper smooth will help a lot. 10 bit is what you want. The highest bit you have, the more colors you're gonna get, and the easier it's gonna be to correct it on post. So 10 bit is a must. For the bitrate, same thing, as high as you can. It's gonna be more information, it's gonna take more space for your computer, but if your computer can handle it, that's the best thing to have. For the shutter speed, normally, we have 1/2 times the frame per second. But the thing is, automatic will work very good, and most of the time you shouldn't bother and you shouldn't worry about it. For the V-comp, I recommend you to put like -0.5 or -1. It's going to be a little bit darker, give it a little bit more contrast, and it's going to be a little bit nicer when you edit your video. For the white balance, auto is okay. You can do your manual white balance, but you're going to have to change it every time you change depth. They're quite okay to find the good balance. And also you can put a red filter if you know you're going to go deep and you cannot bring light. ISO minimum 100. The smaller the number, the better it is, the less noise there will be. And ISO max, I recommend no more than 400 because except if it's a really dark place, you don't want to bring noise to your film. The sharpness, you want to keep it to medium. You don't want to bring it too high because if it's not sharp enough, you can always do it in post-processing and your computer will have a processor that is much faster and much better than the one from your GoPro. So keep it on medium, and if needed, you can do it later on. For the color, I recommend you to use the flat profile. It's going to be a much better dynamic range and you're going to have much better result on post. If you don't want to do color correction, which you shouldn't, you can keep the normal color, but really flat is the best way to go. For the audio, you want to put on RAW, but underwater most of the time it's not super important. If you go film whales and dolphins and animals that make noise, why not? But in general, it's not really important. I hope this video was interesting for you. If it was, don't hesitate to put a thumbs up, and you can also put a comment if you like certain settings and stuff, or also if you want special things for the channel. I'm always looking for new topics to help you out and make nice tutorials. Don't hesitate to subscribe as well. The next video will be on how to color correct shots made with the GoPro 11. And also, if you want to come dive with us, we are proof diving in Bali, northeast of Bali, in Amed. We organize safaris, day trips, and also underwater photo course, and also VIP photographer day trip, where you have your private spotter and don't need to worry about a group. So if you're interested, proof diving, I put the link in the description. Bye bye, happy bubbles!